Before I begin, I want to provide a trigger warning. I will be talking about mental illness, and I will be discussing such subjects as addiction, depression, self-harm, and suicide. If any of these subjects are at all uncomfortable, triggering, or upsetting, please feel free to get some space or do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. Thank you. Depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, OCD, PTSD, MDD. All words we've probably heard before. My first time hearing them was in the 6th grade when my health teacher neatly organized all these things onto a slideshow and we briefly discussed about them and then never brought them up again until my freshman year when we repeated the whole process. I never really thought about what I would do if I or someone else that I knew started experiencing symptoms of a mental illness because, in all honesty, I didn't think it would happen. It happens to other people, at least that was the impression younger me got. So when I did start feeling symptoms of a mental illness, at first I chalked it up to something else. I thought maybe it was just a bad grade getting me down, or, I wasn't getting enough sunlight. But I soon realized that something else wasn't the actual problem. And before I knew it, I was faced with the dilemma of what to do about it. My first hope was that I could track it. Like a linear line, I could follow it down to its worst, never being caught off guard or surprised by what to expect, and eventually, with any luck, I could track it up back to normal, just like a math equation. In the end, it ended up being much more like a roller coaster, full of big drops, corkscrews, sudden turns, and a million different loop-de-loops. Just as I thought that the ride was coming to an end and I was going to get off my funhouse coaster, the technician would hit go again, and off I would go for another round. It wasn't until later that I learned that the name of my funhouse coaster was MDD, otherwise known as clinical depression. At first, it started subtle. A bad day. We all have them. Then it was that suddenly I didn't feel like playing guitar as much anymore. But that's normal, right? Hobbies change, and so can I. As time passed, I wrote off each and every symptom as it came in until those bad days stretched into bad weeks and then bad months. And those hobbies that I used to love so much suddenly just seemed dumb and stupid because they didn't make me feel good anymore. Before I knew it, a pain-ridden, sullen, gray day had become my normal. And it wasn't until someone else pointed out that they hadn't seen me smile in weeks that I realized my normal wasn't normal at all. There was a distinct moment for me when I knew that I needed more help. I was sitting on the couch watching a horror movie, and despite the fact that I'm an absolute scaredy cat, I felt next to nothing. I didn't feel scared at the sight of the terrifying witch or all the jump scares. I didn't feel happy when the heroes triumphed at the end, and I didn't feel excited when my friends texted me during the end credits asking me if I wanted to hang out. I just felt nothing. I felt worthless. I felt alone. I realized that I couldn't remember what it felt like to be happy. I realized that I hadn't felt that way in a long time. I couldn't remember what it felt like to look forward to seeing a person or to enjoy a hobby or to feel good about myself. That warmth in my chest that I called happiness was just gone. In that moment, I couldn't see a point to living my life anymore, and the thought of living the rest of my life was absolutely exhausting. I was assessed by a nearby clinic and put into an IOP program, otherwise known as an intensive outpatient program. An intensive outpatient program is one of many different kinds of programs that allows for more extensive treatment for mental illnesses than what regular therapy can provide. For 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, I would join other groups of patients to participate in the therapy, which would consist of process, where we would discuss our emotions, our symptoms, and the events of the week and how we had dealt with them, and skill, where we would learn different methods to communicate with other people, manage our own symptoms and our urges and our thoughts. For 2 of those days, we would be joined by our families, where we would discuss the events of the week and how we as a family had dealt with them. And we would even have a little fun now and then too, with things like meditation and art projects. On any given day, I could find myself sitting next to someone who struggled to go a day without self-harming and hallucinated because of their medication. And on another day, I could find myself sitting next to someone who struggled with alcohol and pill addiction. But in the end, it wasn't who I was sitting next to, what we learned in skill, or what we talked about in process that was the most striking to me, but rather how it made me feel. I felt, because I was in the IOP program to begin with, that because I struggled with those thoughts and urges that we as a society label as taboo, that I was somehow less than, that I had something I needed to prove to society. It made me realize that this is a really common problem, that we do this every day. While we may say things like, it's okay to not be okay, there are so many things that we do in everyday life that send the exact opposite message. Whether it's comments like, man, the weather is so bipolar today, or if I fail my math test, I am going to kill myself, or He's such a germaphobe, he's so OCD. All of these comments that we use in everyday life can not only be very triggering to someone who struggles with a mental illness, but it also makes it exceedingly hard for someone to come forward when they might need help. It's unintentional, yes, but it sends a very strong message and embeds lots of stigma and stereotypes into society, sending the message that it's not serious, that you should be able to deal with it on your own. The classic, suck it up, walk it off, and move on. And this is a major problem across the United States. According to Mental Health America, only 35% of those that struggle with severe depression actually seek treatment, and that's common, with only 10% of those that struggle with addiction and 36% of those that struggle with anxiety actually seeking treatment, largely because of those embedded stereotypes and stigmas, that it's not serious, that we should be able to deal with it on our own, that the fact that we're struggling means that we're weak or fragile. And these percentages only go up for men, people of color, and the LGBTQ+ community. One of the most things that I distinctly remember being in the IOP program was to think of treatment like an airplane pressurization system. How when an airplane loses pressurization and the oxygen masks drop down, how you're told that you should put on your own mask before you help someone else with theirs. Which sounds a little selfish at first, because we're so used to hearing it from other people, friends, family, teachers, coworkers, strangers, that we begin to tell ourselves the exact same thing. That it could always be worse, that we're just not looking on the bright side, that because we feel there is something wrong, that we're not being grateful for what we have. And that's true, you should be grateful for what you have, but that doesn't mean that what you might be feeling is any less true or any less valid. So whoever needs to hear it, what you're feeling is valid, what you're dealing with is real, and you're not weak or less than for struggling or for wanting to get help. But most importantly, you're not alone. Though it may feel like an awful roller coaster, no roller coaster cart is ever built for one person. You're not alone. It's critical to understand what you have to do to take care of yourself, whether that's painting, reading, listening to music, going for a drive, juggling. But also, most importantly, it's important to understand what you can and can't handle on your own and when you might need to seek help. And that's okay. Y'all need a little help now and then. It's time to stop saying it's okay to not be okay when we dismiss the idea of not being okay every day. It's time to stop using mental illness in conversation as a just replacement when we can't think of the right word. It's time to stop putting our grades, our GPA, our work before our own personal mental health. It's time to stop being a bystander to the stigma. It's time to end it. Thank you.